So this is from Next Gen Stats. Target rate in man coverage from Next Gen Stats. You see Greg Newsome, 5th lowest in the NFL. And he says, stay asleep. I had a, quote, down year, though. Then a fan on Twitter asks Newsome, are you open to playing the slot next year, or do you prefer to move outside? The answer, capital N, capital O, does not want to play the slot cornerback position. Let's welcome in Quincy Carrier from Untitled Unfiltered Browns coverage. Quincy, it's not a surprise, but...
Yeah, I mean, he people are going to have an issue with him just stating it publicly. He doesn't want to do it. I have always been more or less of, I'd rather you not fake it to me. And he don't want to play out. If he don't want to play a slot, there's 100 reasons why he wouldn't want to play a slot. And again, this is part of the, like, when we put more analytics into this, right, and we put more importance on statistical numbers, there's a tendency for some of us to look at this like Madden, right, with Pro Football Focus grades and everything. We're like, oh, we just move this here and we're going to have an 80 overall here. And the reality of football is that it's not a video game. And in video games, you can't measure stuff like, hey, this hurts. And what hurts in football is having to do these run fits as an undersized corner day in and day out, especially for a team that had bad defensive tackle play. So now even more guys are getting to that second level, even more of a responsibility to that nickel DB. And it's not a coincidence when you look at good nickel corners. They are late round draft picks to undrafted guys, because it's kind of a similar philosophy to special teams. Nobody who's good at that does it because that they're good at anything else. They're good at that, right? That's what they can do to stay on a roster. You look at Mike Hilton. I think he was undrafted or 5th round pick out of Cincinnati. I think he was a guy that bounced around a lot of rosters. You look at Troy Hill, who was here a couple years ago. He was an undrafted guy. Like, these guys tend to be undrafted because the variable in playing slot corners that you're gonna be putting your body through a lot, and nobody who's capable of covering on the outside really wants to be on the inside because it's a lot of damage to your body. So it didn't make sense to me that he even agreed to go out back from outside to inside last year. Maybe they caught him being naive as a young player and he agreed to it, but any veteran that had the year that Greg Newsome had would not have agreed to go inside. So I think that's him probably smarting up to, like, I'll make this clear. That's never happening again. Like, that didn't work for the team. It didn't make the team better. It didn't make me better. It didn't help anybody. So it's not happening. It doesn't make sense.
Now, you look at that, though, and there's a surplus at that position. You need a lot of good ones, but in order to make a trade, you need to give something of value to get something of value. And assuming the Browns are going to try to trade for a D tackle or a wide receiver or something to strengthen that roster, cornerback becomes a possibility, I would say. They have strength in numbers.
It's a strong possibility that they trade the cornerback position. I would say this, though. We're putting a lot of focus on Greg Newsome as the person who might get traded. I think it's Martin Emerson that's probably going to be on the block more than likely, because he's the one that really doesn't fit the change in scheme. Like, if there was anybody who benefited from Joe Woods last year, I think it was Martin Emerson, because Martin's issues are he doesn't have the most fluid hips and he doesn't have great long speed. So playing in a lot of quarters and cover 3 really helped them. Now, they're going to play a good amount of cover 3 here, but they're also going to play a good amount of cover 1 in this defense versus what Joe Woods did. And cover 1's not what Martin Emerson's built for. So I think if I'm looking at this just from a scheme fit perspective, nobody's really talking about it, but I wouldn't be surprised if Martin Emerson ends up being the player they ship out. People aren't going to be happy about it, but if you need to trade for something, it depends on what they get back, of course, too, in that value thing. But that's going to be the guy that I would look at saying, hey, if we look at scheme here, Greg Newsome, he can live as a press man corner. Martin Emerson, on the other hand, I think in the NFL, he probably needs help over the top more often than not, and that's just not the kind of defense they're going to be in.